I want to introduce you to someone. Her name is Rozy. She's 22. She's based out of Seoul. And her life, honestly, looks like a nonstop highlight reel.
It really does. The kind of life you see on Instagram, you just think, how?
Exactly. She has over 144,000 followers. She's got these huge modeling contracts with, Tiffany & Co., Calvin Klein. And just in 2022, she generated nearly $2 million in revenue.
Which is an impressive tax bracket for anyone, really, let alone someone who's supposedly just 22.
That's the thing, though. She's not just 22. The kicker is, Rozy isn't real.
She doesn't exist.
Not in the way you and I do. She doesn't breathe. She doesn't have parents. She certainly doesn't have student loans. She is, for all intents and purposes, code. She is pixels on a screen. Her official name is Rozy, and she's a virtual influencer.
And she's out-earning most of the human population.
Right. And that's what we're diving into today. It feels like we're standing right on the edge of something huge.
It's not just a cool piece of tech anymore, is it? Or like a CGI character in a blockbuster movie. We are looking at a fundamental shift in the economy of attention, of fame, of labor, really. It's January 2026, and these synthetic humans are changing the game.
It feels like we blinked and just crossed this invisible line.
Right.
We used to use technology, Instagram, TikTok, to broadcast ourselves. Now it seems like the technology is starting to replace ourselves.
And that's the real tension here. It's the core conflict in this whole stack of research we've pulled for today's deep dive. We've got studies from the Middle East looking at the psychology of this, a ton of data on Indian consumer behavior, and frankly, some really harrowing interviews with actors in South Asia.
And they all point to the same thing, this feeling of displacement.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to try and make sense of it all. How did we get here? We're going to start by looking at the business of being unreal, why a company would throw millions of dollars at a person who doesn't exist.
Then we get into the really weird part, the psychology. Why do we fall for them? Why do we trust them? In some cases, believe it or not, more than we trust actual people.
That's the part that I just can't wrap my head around. And then we have to talk about the human cost, the people being left behind, the actors who are literally losing their faces to these machines.
And if you'll let me get a little philosophical at the end.
I was hoping you would.
We have to ask the big question that was just looming over all of this research for me. Are we, in fact, living in a simulacrum?
Okay, you're going full Baudrillard on us. I'm here for it. But let's start with the money, the cold, hard cash. Because the business being unreal, it is absolutely booming.
Oh, it's a gold rush, a complete gold rush. Let's go back to Rozy for a second. She was created by a company called Cita Studio X back in August of 2020. Now, put yourself in the shoes of that studio. Why do you make a Rozy?
Well, the obvious answer is she's the perfect employee.
And what does perfect mean in this context?
Let's see, she's forever 22, so she never ages out of the demographic. She never needs a lunch break, never calls in sick. Her hair is literally programmed to be perfect every single day.
All true. All very efficient. But what is the single biggest risk a brand like Calvin Klein takes on when they hire a massive celebrity spokesperson?
The human element. The celebrity does something dumb. They tweet something from 10 years ago that comes back to bite them. They get into a scandal. They have messy public breakup.
Liability. Humans are walking, talking liability machines. Rozy is never going to get caught in a scandal. She will never have an offensive tweet from 2014 surface because she didn't exist in 2014. For a brand, she is a completely zero-risk, high-reward asset.
It's so cynical when you put it like that, but the business logic is, well, it's flawless. You get total, absolute creative control.
And that control translates directly into dollars. In 2021, which was her first full year really gaining traction, she made over $1 billion Korean won.
$1 billion won. What does that work out to?
It's about 854,000 US dollars. And that was just the start. By 2022, she smashed that, hitting nearly 2 million.
And she's doing this by modeling real products. That's the part that still feels like science fiction. She's a fake person selling you a very real Tiffany necklace.
The tech is what sells it. It's this incredible blend of 3D modeling, motion capture, and an AI-powered personality. But it's the design philosophy behind her that's really telling.
What do you mean?
The studio was very open about this in their press materials. They said they specifically designed her to have, and this is a direct quote, Oriental facial features with a Western physique.
Oof. Oriental facial features. That phrase alone just It
Yeah.
then lands weirdly.
It's a very jarring and frankly outdated choice of words, especially for a Western audience, but it tells you everything you need to know about the process. They aren't trying to create a person, they're engineering a product for maximum global appeal.
So they ran the numbers. They figured out that this specific combination, this sort of exoticized look with a more standard Western body type, would perform best in the global market.
Precisely. It's not about what a person looks like, it's about what the data suggests people want to look at. It is beauty by algorithm.
Calculated beauty. But this isn't just for huge studios anymore, right? That's what's changing as we're speaking. In 2026, this is becoming accessible.
That's the next wave. We're seeing the democratization of synthetic fame. I was reading about platforms like Sugar Lab AI.
This is the do-it-yourself version.
Essentially, Sugar Lab AI and similar platforms give individual creators the tools to build their own virtual influencers from scratch. You don't need a multi-million-dollar render farm anymore. You can sit at home, generate a persona, fine-tune every single detail of their appearance, their personality, and then start monetizing them on platforms like FanView.
Wait, so just to be clear, I could be sitting in my apartment right now, and online, I could be managing the account of I don't know, a 23-year-old Brazilian surfer who moonlights as a DJ.
You absolutely could, and people are doing it. We're seeing creators pull in $10,000 a month, sometimes more. It's creating what they call a zero-drama creator economy.
Zero drama.
Think about it. If you're managing a portfolio of talent, why would you deal with a human model who has emotional needs, who needs to sleep, who gets sick, who has opinions, when you can have a digital entity that works 24/7, can be in 3 places at once, and does exactly what you tell it to?
It's turning human identity into a passive income stream. But I'm still stuck on the other side of the screen. I get why a company wants to create a fake person. But why do we want to follow them? Can humans really truly bond with lines of code?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer appears to be yes. If you scroll through the comments on Rosie's Instagram, people aren't just saying, hey, cool CGI. They're saying, I love your outfit, or you look so happy here, or where can I buy that jacket?
So they know she's fake, but they don't care.
For the most part, yes, it's not a secret, but the suspension of disbelief is total. And this brings us to a really fascinating 2025 study that looked at this exact question in the Middle East, specifically in Egypt and Jordan.
This was the one on parasocial relationships, or PSRs.
That's the one. A parasocial relationship is that one-sided emotional bond you develop with a media figure. You feel like you know them, you feel like they're your friend, even though they have no idea who you are. We've all felt it with a musician or a YouTuber.
Sure, you watch someone's vlogs every day for a year. You feel like you've been through things with them. But this study is saying we can form that same bond with an AI.
It's saying more than that. It's saying that in certain cultural contexts, the AI can actually be better at building that bond than a human.
Hold on, say that again. A fake person can build a deeper, more meaningful emotional connection than a real person. How is that even possible?
It all comes down to cultural values. The researchers focused on collectivist cultures, like those in Egypt and Jordan, where things like community, social harmony, and group cohesion are prioritized. And in those environments, what do you think is one of the most valuable social currencies?
I guess reliability, being someone others can count on.
Exactly. Reliability. Now think about your human friends. Are they always reliable?
I mean, mostly. But no, of course not. People have bad days. They get moody. They flake on plans. They post weird, cryptic things online when they're going through something.
Humans are messy. We are gloriously, frustratingly inconsistent. We're unpredictable. An AI influencer, on the other hand, is algorithmically consistent. They're always responsive. They're always on brand. They're never going to have a meltdown in your DMs.
So they're the perfect, stable friend who's always in a good mood and always says the right thing.
And according to this study, that consistency generates something called bonding social capital. It fosters this feeling of a tight-knit, stable community because the central figure, the influencer, is so predictable and safe. The AI never introduces drama that could disrupt the harmony of the group.
That is wild. So the theory is that because Rozy will never go off the rails, we feel safer investing our emotions in her. We get the feeling of connection without the risk of human betrayal.
That seems to be it. The study draws a clear line between the two pathways to trust. For human influencers, trust is built on narrative depth. You know, their life story, their struggles, their vulnerability, that's how they connect.
They show you their flaws to prove they're real.
Right. But for AI influencers, trust is built on something else entirely. It's built on perceived intimacy through constant, predictable availability and responsiveness.
It's a trade-off then. You give up the, I don't know, the soul or the authenticity of a real human connection, but in return you get a connection that's safe, predictable, and always on.
And you have to remember the context. We're living in a pretty chaotic world. The last few years have been anything but calm. So the appeal of a boring but stable digital friend is perhaps stronger than ever. We're outsourcing our emotional needs to entities that literally cannot hurt us.
That's a pretty bleak way of looking at it, but I can't say it doesn't make a certain kind of sense. But it's not just a simple story of fake people replacing real ones, is it? I was looking at that other study, the one from India, focusing on Madhya Pradesh and Indore. It seems like the real humans are having to become more synthetic just to keep up.
This is the other side of the coin. This is the augmented human. It's not just Rosie over here and a human influencer over there. The line is blurring. We're seeing human influencers in India using AI to optimize every single aspect of their online lives.
Because we're talking about real people, flesh and blood.
Hmm.
But they're using AI tools to do what exactly?
Everything. From the simple stuff like timing optimization, the AI tells them the exact second to post for maximum reach to audience matching and automated caption generation.
So far, so standard marketing tools.
But it goes so much deeper. They're using sophisticated sentiment analysis to essentially read the room on a massive scale.
Sentiment analysis is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot.
Oh.
What does that actually look like for an influencer on the ground?
Okay, so imagine an AI that scans the last 10,000 comments on your posts. It analyzes the language, the keywords, the emojis, and it determines that the overall mood of your audience is, say, anxious or fatigued.
Right.
The AI will then suggest a caption for your next post that is perfectly calibrated to soothe that specific anxiety. It might tell you to use a softer color palette in your photo. It might suggest a specific tone of voice that research has shown is perceived as more empathetic.
So it's not just scheduling posts.
Yeah.
It's algorithmically hacking empathy.
It's quantifying and deploying empathy as a marketing tool. And the scary part, it works. It works incredibly well. The study found that when human influencers use these AI optimization tools, their engagement rate jumped by 37%.
37%. That's not a small bump. That is a massive game-changing advantage.
It is. And it gets better for the brands. The purchase intent, so the likelihood that a follower will actually go and buy a product the influencer recommends, that went up by 42%.
Wow.
The machine simply knows how to sell things better than the human does because it can process thousands of data points about an audience that no human brain could possibly hold at once.
But there has to be a catch. I remember reading about something called the authenticity paradox.
And this is the razor's edge that these influencers have to walk. It's a classic double-edged sword. The data is clear. While we, the audience, love the result of the AI, the perfectly timed posts, the soothing captions, the content that feels like it was made just for us.
We hate knowing how the sausage is made.
Exactly. In that same Indian study, when consumers were made aware that AI was being used to help create the content, their perception of that influencer's authenticity plummeted.
So if I use an AI to write the perfect empathetic caption, and you find out about it, you trust me less, even if you like the caption.
Significantly less. On their scale, the perceived authenticity score dropped from a 4.6 down to a 4.1. It triggers this feeling of betrayal. We want the perfection, but we want to believe it's innate. We want to believe you actually felt that empathy. You didn't just generate it from a prompt.
That puts influencers in an impossible position. To compete with the Rosies of the world, you have to use AI. But the moment you admit to using AI, you risk alienating the very audience you're trying to connect with.
You're forced to become a secret cyborg. And what's really interesting is that the study found this drop in trust was less severe in the big urban tech-savvy areas like Indore. It was much worse in the semi-urban regions.
Why is the difference?
It's likely just a matter of exposure. People in major tech hubs probably just assume, on some level, that everything is filtered and optimized anyway. But the core paradox is the same everywhere. We are rewarding influencers for being machine-like in their perfection and efficiency, but we punish them the moment they admit to using the machine.
The pressure, then, is to become a perfect machine, but maintain the illusion that you're just a relatable, flawed human.
Precisely. And if that's the pressure on the influencers at the top, the ones who are still the stars of the show, imagine the pressure on the people further down the food chain, the working actors.
This is where we need to shift gears. Because so far, it's been about marketing metrics and engagement rates. But there is a very real and frankly very dark human cost to all of this. We have to talk about the actors.
This section of the research, I'll be honest, it really kept me up at night. There's a study here that includes interviews with 16 working actors across South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And the picture they paint, it's not about optimization. It's about existential dread. It's about erasure.
They're talking about losing the rights to their own faces.
Their likeness, their voice, their movements, everything that makes them an actor. The technology of deepfakes and voice synthesis has gotten so good that a studio can now create a photorealistic, high-fidelity digital clone of an actor. And the people most at risk here aren't the big Bollywood stars.
It's the people without the power to say no.
It's the background actors, the stunt performers, the voice artists. They are the canaries in this digital coal mine.
Walk me through how it happens.
Okay, so an actor, maybe a stunt performer, gets a call for one day of work on a big film. They show up to set. At some point during the day, they're asked to step into a scanning booth.
What's a scanning booth?
Imagine a big sphere lined with hundreds of high-resolution cameras all pointed at you. They tell you to stand in the middle, and for 15, maybe 20 minutes, they have you make a series of facial expressions. A smile, a frown, a look of surprise. You say a few lines of dialogue, they pay you for your one day of work, and you go home.
And then what?
And then the studio owns your scan. They own your digital double. For the rest of time, they can put your face on any digital body they want. They can make you run, jump, or fall in 1,000 different action scenes. They can populate an entire army with your face and that stunt performer. They never get hired for that kind of work again. Why would they? The studio already owns a cheaper, faster digital version of them.
It can't be legal. How can a studio just own someone's face forever?
This is what the study calls the contract trap. These actors, especially the younger ones who are desperate to get their foot in the door, are being presented with contracts that are intentionally, predatorily vague.
What kind of language are we talking about here?
It's buried in the fine print. Clauses that grant the studio rights to their likeness in any and all media now known or hereafter devised. Phrases like simulation rights, or granting these rights throughout the universe and in perpetuity.
In perpetuity. Forever.
Forever. The terminology is so dense and technical that a lot of the older actors interviewed just didn't understand what they were signing. They thought it was a standard photo release. And the younger actors, they understand, but they feel like they have no leverage. If you're the one person who says no to the scan, they'll just hire the next person in line who will say yes.
There was a part in there about the zombie problem. That phrase it stuck with me.
Posthumous use. This is the ultimate violation for many of them. The fear that long after you're dead, your digital ghost will be resurrected to keep working. Your image, your voice could be used to sell products you'd find abhorrent, or to star in films you would have hated.
It's like digital puppetry of the dead. It's horrifying.
It strips a person of their final act of agency. And it's not just about the individual. This study brought up a huge risk to culture itself that I hadn't even considered.
This was the point about regional acting style.
Exactly. Acting isn't a generic skill. It's deeply cultural and physical. The study used the example of Marathi theatrical traditions, where there's a very specific physicality, a way of moving and projecting emotion that's been developed over centuries. It's distinct.
And the fear is that AI will just smooth all of that out.
Yes. An AI model is trained on a massive global data set. It learns what sadness looks like by averaging millions of examples. The danger is that it will flatten these unique regional performance styles into a generic, globally palatable product.
So instead of a distinct Marathi performance, you get a sadness version 2.0 animation that looks the same, whether it's deployed in Mumbai or Los Angeles or Mexico City.
Exactly. We risk a global monoculture of performance, a simulacrum of acting that looks correct to an algorithm, but feels completely hollow, completely stripped of cultural soul. You lose the nuance. You lose the beautiful human imperfection that makes art interesting in the first place.
It's just so clear that the technology is moving light years ahead of the laws and the ethics. We've got these fake people making millions, real influencers forced to act like robots, and working actors literally signing away their souls in these contracts. But looking at the risk landscape section of our research, it does seem like the law is finally starting to wake up.
The Wild West era is definitely coming to a close. Regulators, especially in the U.S., realized they couldn't just let this run unchecked forever. We saw the first big warning shot from the FTC back in August of 2024. They came out with a ban on fake reviews and endorsements.
And then New York State passed that big law in 2025, specifically governing AI-generated content disclosures.
Right. And now, in 2026, we're seeing the real teeth class action lawsuits. That's what gets the attention of the big brands. The idea that a consumer can sue because they felt misled by an influencer. If you bought a skincare product because you thought Rosie's perfect skin was attainable, only to find out Rosie doesn't have skin, well, that's a potential lawsuit.
It makes sense. You can't advertise results that are literally physically impossible because the person demonstrating them is made of pixels.
Exactly. And this is where this concept of disclosure facts comes into play. The source material called it a flu shot against liability, which I thought was a great way to put it.
So is this just a fancy new hashtag like hashtag ad, or is it something more?
It's much more robust. Think of it as a standardized, verified system of record. It's like a chain of custody for an advertisement. Before an ad campaign involving an influencer, real or virtual, goes live, the entire commercial relationship is documented, timestamped, and verified in this system.
So if a regulator or a lawsuit comes knocking, the brand can just pull up this immutable record and say, look, here is the proof. We disclosed everything clearly and correctly on this date.
Precisely. And the data on its effectiveness is pretty compelling. The research showed that using a verified disclosure system like this reduces the likelihood of regulatory scrutiny escalating into a full-blown lawsuit by a factor of 47.
47 times. Okay, so that's a no-brainer. Brands are going to adopt this purely out of self-preservation.
It signals a huge shift in the industry. The era of we just trust our influencers to do the right thing is over. Trust is no longer a viable legal strategy. Verification is the strategy. We know we can't trust our own eyes anymore, so now we have to trust the paperwork.
Which, in a weird way, brings us full circle. We've covered the business, the psychology, the human cost, the legal reaction. But you promised us some philosophy. You said we might be living in a simulacrum. Let's go there.
I did. And I genuinely think it's the only framework that lets us understand what a phenomenon like Rosie really represents. The idea comes from the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard. He wrote about the concept of the hyperreal.
The hyperreal.
It's a state where the simulation of reality becomes more real or is treated as more true than reality itself. The copy replaces the original.
Okay, that's a pretty heavy concept. How do we get to that point? Break it down for us.
Baudrillard laid out 4 stages of the image. It's a progression from reality to hyperreality. Stage 1 is simple. The image is a reflection of a basic, fundamental reality. Think of a simple portrait of a person or a photograph of a tree. It represents a thing that actually exists.
Okay, simple enough. Stage 1 is a mirror.
Stage 2 is where the image starts to mask and pervert that basic reality. Think of a heavily photoshopped magazine cover. The original person is still there, somewhere underneath, but their skin has been smoothed, their waist has been cinched. It's a distortion of the truth.
So basically all of Instagram. Got it.
Pretty much. Now, stage 3 is where it gets more abstract. The image now masks the absence of a basic reality. My favorite example is Disneyland. Main Street, USA is presented as this idealized, nostalgic version of a small American town. But that perfect town never actually existed. It's a simulation of a fantasy presented as if it were real.
Okay, so it's a copy of something that never had an original. And stage 4.
Stage 4 is pure simulacrum. The image has no relationship to any reality whatsoever. It is its own reality. It is a simulation that generates its own truth. This is Rosie.
Rosie is a stage 4 simulacrum.
Yes. Rosie is not a copy of a real 22-year-old model. She's a copy of a data-driven idea of what a perfect model should be. She is, as Baudrillard would say, a map for which there is no territory. There is no original Rosie walking around Seoul. But, and this is the absolute key, in the digital world, she has more influence, more economic power, and in a sense, more reality than you or I do.
Because she's better at performing the idea of a person online than an actual person is. She is the hyperreal.
She is a third-order simulacrum. And we are now entering an era, as one of our sources puts it, of generative AI and the simulacrum of creativity. The algorithm itself is now creating the culture.
The map is now drawing the territory.
Exactly. Rosie isn't just reflecting fashion trends. She is setting them. She is defining beauty standards for millions of people. But she comes from nowhere. She is a ghost in the machine dictating reality.
That is both terrifying and weirdly profound. So if that's where we are, where does that leave the rest of us, the actual humans? Is there any way to push back?
Well, the actors in that South Asian study, they talked about something they called soft resistance.
I like that phrase, soft resistance. What does it actually look like in practice?
It's this belief, or maybe it's more of a hope, That despite all the technology, all the algorithmic perfection, all the flawless lighting, that eventually audiences will start to crave the soul again. They will crave the flaw.
The little crack in a singer's voice, the bad hair day, the awkward, unscripted pause in a conversation.
The very things that make us human. They believe that we will start to value a performance specifically because it isn't perfect. That human imperfection will become the new premium product.
It's like how people will pay more for a handmade wooden table, precisely because it has knots and isn't factory perfect.
That's the hope. But the really terrifying question, the one that hangs over all of this, is whether the AI will just learn to fake the flaws too. What happens when Rosie can be programmed to have a bad day or to make a charmingly relatable mistake? Will we even be able to tell the difference?
Can you simulate a soul?
And if the simulation is good enough, does it even matter to the audience if there's a real soul behind it? If you feel a genuine sense of community and connection from an AI influencer, does the fact that it's just code invalidate that feeling?
Which I think brings us to our final thought. And this is something I really want you, the listener, to chew on the next time you find yourself endlessly scrolling through your feed.
If a virtual influencer like Rosie can create bonding social capital, if she can make you feel like you're part of a safe, stable community more effectively than a messy, unpredictable human can, and if she can generate millions of dollars without ever complaining, then what happens to the value of human imperfection?
Are we architecting a world where being human, with all of our flaws and inconsistencies, is actually a competitive disadvantage?
The next time you double tap on a post, just take a half second and ask yourself, is this a person? Is this a simulacrum? Or in 2026, has that distinction finally stopped meaning anything at all?
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
We'll see you next time.